Hi everyone, and welcome back to Season 8 of the Propcast. I'm Louisa Dickens, your host of the Propcast and co-founder of LMRE, the global PropTech recruitment and search consultancy. The aim of each episode is to introduce you to a PropTech innovator and discuss how their work has created a shift in focus when it comes to digitalising the built environment. If you're interested in finding out more about PropTech or applying for a job in this space, or keen to know who the big players are that are moving and shaking the real estate industry, we have you covered. And we'll be bringing you an episode each week to connect you to the VCs, PropTech startups, and real estate professionals from around the globe. Today on the Propcast, we'll be finding out how we can become smart building experts. And who better to speak to about this other than Matthew Marson, co-founder of the Smart Building Bootcamp, and Michael Grant, the other co-founder of Smart Building Bootcamp, who is also co-founder and COO of Metrikus. So welcome to the show, Matthew and Michael.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Lou. Great to be on.
The smart building industry is an overwhelmingly complicated industry, as we are all finding out. I know I certainly am, since doing a bit of research before this podcast. There are hundreds of vendors all saying the same thing, while at the same time all claiming they do smart differently. On this podcast, Matthew and Michael will explain how they can equip you with the skills you need to interpret technical jargon and their journeys to the smart building world. Matthew will talk us through innovations he's seen in this space, and Michael's going to elaborate a bit more about the Metrikus and Aerated product, but also go into different key modules of their course and the key takeaways which you'll have from that. They'll obviously finish off talking about the trends and changes they've seen in this space and what to expect. So let's get started with the podcast. So without further ado, why don't we start off with you, Matthew, how you came to you obviously enrolled at WSP Smart Places practice to growing Essentials offering in this field as well. You've just obviously launched the Smart Building Bootcamp alongside Michael. Just for our audience who don't know you, just give a little taste to your career journey to date.
Yeah, well, I trained actually as an architect and engineer. Went to go work in the bank for a bit, which was definitely not me. And when I started at Accenture in the sustainability team, we were basically looking for ways in which we could reduce energy consumption for our clients. And that's kind of where our heating, ventilation, and air conditioning analytics offering was born. And that kind of really took off as we were using some kind of machine learning and sort of early analytics to look for ways in which a business could achieve those energy reductions. And then, it kind of went from there, really. I was given far too much money and responsibility to build out Accenture's flagship innovation center called the Dock in Dublin, where we had kind of chucked everything in the kitchen sink at it in terms of IoT. So you could open meeting rooms with your signature dance move. We could locate, say, all marketing professionals in real time. Really cool capability, which then really changed the conversations that we were having with our clients and how buildings technology might be able to come together. So once I'd finished there, went across to WSP to set up their Smart Places practice, which had to work on things like the Salesforce Tower in San Francisco, Trinity Gate here in London, and Oxygen at Neom. And I've been working on all sorts of daft projects since then, really. I've enjoyed it.
How did you meet Michael then? When did this sort of bromance start?
A chance meeting, I think, an industry event. We really got on. We were sort of talking about the problems that I suppose we face in our roles across the industry overall. And it kind of went from there, really.
Yeah, those people who say, we don't need sort of in-person events, but the power, literally, the amount of people I've sort of met at these recent events, where it's Cretech, Myth, and it's just so powerful. And it's just such a good way of actually connecting rather than obviously over Zoom. You don't come up with these incredible ideas like a smart building course, which you're obviously going to hear about in a minute, just over a quick Zoom call. Now, Michael, obviously for the audience as well, could you talk us through a little bit more about your career at state as well? And obviously that involves a couple of tech businesses, Metrikus and Aerated. But how did you even get there in the first place? Is it the normal sort of real estate path? Is it the tech path?
It's nowhere near as glamorous as Matt's. So, I'm a Sparky by trade. So I was a Sparky in Australia. My boss at the time said, don't become a grumpy old bastard of an electrician like I am for the rest of your life. There's this new thing called IT. You should get into it. So Sparky, then electrical engineering, which I didn't follow up at all. Went straight into IT. Left Australia to go traveling for 6 months, and 24 years later, I've not gone back, and went into IT, went into infrastructure, project management, and then built data centers for a few years. Then got into wireless networks, then into unified comms. And then from unified comms, I got into software, and I've never been in real estate or the real estate space until I was brought into the previous company before I did a management buyout of Metrikus, was asset mapping, to help run operations and expand the business from a single kind of entity and scope to expanding out and figuring out what else software could do. And then did a management buyout of Metrikus 3 years ago.
Nice.
So I've been in real estate since then. While building Metrikus and working with Metrikus, we had a lady who shared our office with us called Olga Turner Baker. She was Olga Turner before she got married, and a young guy called Ollie. And they said, look, what you guys do in connecting buildings and indoor air quality data, there's an idea we've had about, trying to do something with indoor air quality and almost give buildings a score. What do you think? So we kind of thought up the idea of Aerated and an air score. And then we had Brady, who worked for us in Metrikus already. And she's the environmental scientist that did a master's in indoor air quality. I wrote the operational model and the commercial model, and Francesca did the science. And then lo and behold, Aerated sprung out of Metrikus. So we spun Aerated out, and we run Aerated as a separate business. And Metrikus is obviously the smart buildings platform. And that's how we met Matt, as he said in an event. I talked about what we do as Metrikus. Matt was talking about what he was doing at WSP at the time. And we both then talked about education. And then, we are where we are today in our bromance, as you mentioned.
Hi, I'm Anthony Slumbers from the Real Innovation Academy, home of the Future-Proof Real Estate course, designed to accelerate your real estate career. To learn more, please visit realinnovationacademy.com/LMRE for details and a 25% discount.
Okay, now let's talk about the bootcamp. Talk us, because obviously it's launched 2 weeks ago. And for those listening in, I think Michael and Matt, so they've already had something like 70 people sign up literally immediately when it launched, which is incredible. And it's not an expensive course for what you get out of it. There's a huge amount of content, which we're going to talk about. And it's only for about, I think it's £1,500.
Yeah.
And it covers, is that right, Guy?
Yep. So £150 if you just want to do individual modules. So if you do everything, there's a discount, and it's £1,500. So that's how it works.
And now let's cover the key modules, because I think obviously you said you can do it one by one. I'd love to hear maybe what module do you sort of start off with? Is there one which sort of breaks into it? I'm sure there's slightly more technical modules. Just run us through each one.
Yeah. So the 15, we've arranged them into 3 tracks of 5 modules. The first one is called Trends, which tells you all about the market opportunity and kind of what's going on in the world of IoT and how that links to real estate. We'll then take you through some of the kind of fundamental buzzwords of tech that you need to know in the space. We'll introduce you to a couple of bits around business case before looking at some of the broader human consumer trends with technology more generally, and then finish off that track with what it means for the operations and the kind of facilities side of your buildings. At that point, if that kind of breaks you in, we then start to get a lot more technical. And the next track, we call it physical. And that is all of the systems that, if you're more on the kind of techie side of thing, that teaches you the context in which you'll be working in smart buildings. So we look at what it means to kind of stand up something around energy analytics, lighting, access control, how all this smart stuff kind of links to the well standard and things to do with well-being in general. And yeah, so that will kind of help with the sort of physical side. And then the final track we call digital, very much more for the property end of the spectrum. If you're already au fait with the industry that we work in, it will kind of teach you all the fundamentals of IoT, web tech, what's JSON, HTTPS, all the different acronyms. The idea is that it will take you through how it works, the sorts of diagrams that you expect to see from your techies, so that you've got enough information to be dangerous when making rather large investment decisions.
Give us an example of some jargon which you teach, like to say if I'm an asset manager, is there any sort of keywords which people often don't know what they mean?
Yeah, I think when people talk about the different types of database that are out there, if it's a SQL or MongoDB, or what does it mean for it to be structured or unstructured? What's a server? JSON, which is not a person. It's normally a way in which you structure some data to send it over to somebody, and how all those kind of different systems come together. I've found through my career actually that a techie will produce you something that's called a systems architecture, which is a kind of visual abstraction of how different things might talk to each other or the ways in which information flows. But if you give that to a property person, they think it's a wiring diagram. So it looks at all that sort of stuff, so that when a techie tries to bamboozle you, then at least you can call them out on things that don't look quite right.
Well, I think obviously everyone who listens to this podcast, some of them are obviously surveyors, they're asset managers. Obviously, we got some techies listening into this who are probably like, God, I already know this. But honestly, this is the perfect course which so many people have been asking for, especially as now loads of investment managers are finally getting budgets to invest in trial technology. So, to avoid wasting any money on the wrong products is obviously so crucial. The 70 people that have already signed up, they're obviously global, as we've seen the adoption in technology happening everywhere. Who are the sort of main people taking this course? Is it just is it just a real estate folk? Is it people from, I don't know, the Axis, Avivas, the JRLs? Who's taking it?
It's quite a wide mix, actually. We've got people from, not just from real estate space, so not the JLLs and the CBREs and the others. There are people from those types of businesses, but there are people like investment banks, whether they're UK or US or APAC based, the head of operations, the head of facilities, the head of real estate. There's lots of people signing up because there's people who, if you're in facilities, you might understand the building management system, but what does IoT mean? What does connecting occupancy and capacity sensors mean? What sort of data can you pull out of it? What should you be looking for? Because as Matt said, someone can provide you a diagram that you think is a wiring diagram, but it's not. And a lot of things need to be simplified. And actually, it really is a match made in heaven between Matt and us and the idea. And everyone else was, buying pets and cooking bread over lockdown. Matt was busy writing the syllabus. And when we came together, we've just kind of hit it off. And I was talking about one of the things we do as Metrikus, we try and educate people. We don't just sell to people, because if you don't know what they're buying, then you shouldn't really sell it to them. And I've actually done some, and I wouldn't call them courses, but some of our customers say, can you tell us about smart buildings? There's a lovely lady we work with who's a program manager, and she's very good at program management. She's been in real estate a long time, but they now need to digitize their estate. And she said, can you please run me through this? I'd like to be educated on it. And at that point, I was talking to Charlotte Lang, our other co-founder of Smart Building Bootcamp, who I said, Charlotte, look, how do we do something around this? And then we met Matt not long after, and we're like, my God, this is like, if whoever believes in fate, Matt and I and Charlotte were meant to meet, because what I was talking about, what Matt was doing and done and put together, and then we top-tailed for the people who need it. So we've got operations managers, we've got heads of real estate, we've got the heads of workplace, we've got some surveyors. Who else we got? We got quite a mixed bag, haven't we, of people who've signed up?
Famous sportswear brand I saw on the list as well.
Yeah. Yeah. As Matt said before you make an investment in digitizing your estate, whether it's one building or 100 buildings, you should try and educate yourself on the good and bad and ugly about what's out there. And so that, as Matt said, you've got enough information to be educated, or enough information to be dangerous, or enough information to ask the right questions when some company comes to sit in front of you and says, I can solve all your smart building and digital problems. You should buy it from me. You can then ask questions and have some informed information behind those questions that you ask.
And I think I'm sort of saying as well across the industry that the reason that we're kind of in the predicament that we are is that basically I think built environment education is a bit pants. It was designed for a former era, and the REBA makes sure it's protected to make sure that nothing is newer than 100 years old in it,
Yeah.
And what it's meant is that we've got a whole bunch of people who are now in leadership positions who are woefully ill-educated and have got inadequate kind of decision-making abilities. What are large investments, and why I'm kind of confident that this will hit a sweet spot in the market is through the kind of trial and error that I've been through with getting some of the projects off the ground that I have, because most of the sort of design work had to start with an intense education period with the client in the first place so that we were going down the right route. And I think the fact that the education isn't there has also led to what we're seeing in the market, just the nonsense buzzwords that people pump out, and almost like the fact it's okay to lie in what you say your product can and can't do. I think we're in quite a dangerous place at the minute.
There's a lot of that. There is a hell of a lot of that.
Well, yeah, there's I don't know if you guys know, Nikesh, who obviously chairs Green Tech, so Real Estate Investment Management Tech Associations, that has all the big investment managers, whether it's say Oxford Properties, PGIM, LaSalle, and so forth. And they get together quarterly and sort of discussing what products are out there, and people come and pitch, but they're all asking, what do we use? What can we look at? Obviously smart, making a building smart, making it energy efficient, especially with all these new, I guess, since COP26, these metrics you obviously have to hit, or data which you need to show in terms of like reducing emissions. Everyone's asking that question. I know James at Unisu, they're trying to almost rate different products out there into different verticals and what they do. I think that's obviously literally impossible to do, but considering some of these products are so early, how, like you just said, how do you actually know how successful they are? And why would it be making a product successful, just it's successful in one building? Why would it work in the next? Because everything, there's so many different variables and changes in metrics. I'm sure the Metrikus product's bloody great and can solve, all the problems. But like your platform obviously focuses on optimizing a building's environment, maintenance, sort of makes a healthy building. What actually makes it sort of smart for, and what are the major changes you've seen of us coming out of COVID your customers are looking for? Is it, obviously you're obviously part of Aerated as well. What are they wanting from your product? What are you trying to show them, and what problem are you trying to solve?
It depends on the customer, Lou. One thing that's happened post-COVID. So prior to COVID, 95% of our customers were tenant/occupier. Outside, up to come the other side of COVID, it's 50-50. So we've got more landlords than we've ever worked with before. And it depends on what the customers want. We've got a large Canadian landlord who are helping with energy and energy metering and pulling the data out. And they take the data out via our API and they put it into Power BI for their exec reporting. So they don't use the front end of the Metrikus platform, but we give them all the API, we give them all the data via the API. And that's valuable for them because they need to do it for their management and MI reporting. Some customers want indoor air quality. Some want occupancy and capacity monitoring because they're looking to reduce the size of their estate. Some want energy monitoring. We've got a very large customer in the Middle East, Aldar, who started off with indoor air quality and now understanding what else they can do with the platform are going into energy monitoring, water monitoring, looking at occupancy and capacity. It really does depend on who you are and what your objectives are. It goes back to what we said earlier. Lots of people say, I can connect everything and digitize your building up the wazoo, but you can't do that overnight. It's a journey, and you've got to start somewhere and pick your goals and objectives. And if you're smart about it, the goals and objectives you pick at the start will drive enough ROI to fund the rest of the rollout. Because if you don't do that, then there's no value for the customer and they won't keep rolling it out. So we do lots of different things, but and a lot of the landlords we're working with, you mentioned one of them earlier, who's a new customer of ours, but a really proactive. They want to understand, are they providing the best possible space for their tenants in the common areas and the areas they control? Are we providing great indoor air quality? And they're putting it up on the screens. We've got kiosk view in Metrikus, which is based on the WELL standard, which, red, amber, green, so that people can see the indoor air quality. We're monitoring spaces of how many people are in and out because there's still a lot of people worried about COVID and being in crowded spaces. And landlords now need to have an edge on other landlords. So there's a lot that have come out of the box post-COVID that have been really proactive and coming to us to say, how can you help? What can we do?
Yeah.
These are areas we'd like to start. So it really is a mixed bag. There's no one person saying, there's no one thing that we're really dominating on specifically. Ask me to pinpoint one of them. For the tenant/occupier, it's measuring the occupancy and capacity. So they understand, do they need as much real estate now as they did before? And can they optimize that real estate? From a landlord side, it is indoor air quality. Are we providing great indoor air quality in our spaces? And looking at energy for sustainability and ESG so they can help, reduce energy usage as much as humanly possible.
I've seen the 3 Cs, which was compliance, coerce, and collaboration, where initially it was about making sure that they could prove that air quality was suitable, that things are being cleaned at the right time, that they know where people have been. It then became about coercion. What can I do to get you back into the office that might be a bit of fun, that's a reason to buy your train ticket and your lunch, that kind of thing. And now we're talking about collaboration. How do we design somewhere that we don't know when people are turning up, what they're going to be working on, delivering spaces that might have some people in person versus remote? And I think the obvious answer is deploying the right smart buildings technology to prove and adapt to all the things that are going on.
And that, well, there's got plenty of things to think about there. And obviously you want to create a building, obviously you mentioned for various reasons, but also I did a podcast on Caleb's Work Bold podcast with James, who is head of leasing at 22 Bishopsgate, which is obviously an incredible building, as you both well know. I think, Matt, you mentioned that you obviously involved in it previously. And that's obviously a very smart building, but it's also about people that sort of go into this because they want to attract and retain talent, having a healthy office, which obviously where it has sort of the flex space, people now looking to go into a healthy building. You mentioned about sort of good air quality, feeling safe, all these sort of things, creating a healthy environment. Aside of obviously retaining and getting the talent there, let's actually talk about the talent and skills that you both have seen since growing your careers in this space. I mean, as obviously at LMRE, we're constantly trying to headhunt people from STEM industries, because it's not just real estate people, as you mentioned earlier, who are going into these sort of professions, into the smart building space. When you maybe we can start off with you, Matt, what you've seen in terms when you've been hiring, what sort of skills do you look for? Where do you see people coming from? Obviously, you came down through the WSP sort of route on Accenture, but where have you seen this talent coming from?
Yeah, it's really tough actually to find good people. I think the amount of times I've had a CV put in front of me, then they're a smart buildings expert because they once looked at a BMS 20 years ago. I think having a good combination of sort of software and some built environment experience tells me that they're probably curious, they're good problem solvers, a little bit technically minded, but also understand the context in which they operate. I think the hire that I made that I'm probably most proud of is a guy at my team who actually came from a drama background, but as part of that, he did a load of music tech stuff, which gave him curiosity to keep going. But that's the drama side of it gave him the proper kind of empathy to talk to users, and the quality of designs that you get of how the tech's going to be used by a person from them is just astonishing. And that has provided us with real kind of competitive edge. So I think when I'm sort of making hiring decisions, I'm looking for more to do with sort of curiosity and interest and the right attitude. I kind of feel like some of the technical stuff will either teach it or it'll change in 12 months anyway. So as long as, you've learned how to learn, that's the main thing.
Interesting. The advice was going into a client pitch of HR for, say, one of the traditional sort of real estate asset managers or owners, landlords. And I suggested, hey, why don't we widen the pool and have a look at people come from the drama route or something? They would stare right back at me. But I'm literally apparently I speak to people from every single bloody industry. Like you said, it's having that people who come from, whether it's their technical sort of understanding from the software background. What you described at the beginning, people have that software and built environment experience. There's not too many of them out there. Obviously, whenever we do work with someone like that, they sort of get, hired almost sort of straight away.
Hi, this is Vic Drummond from Blueprint, and we are excited to gather the leading innovators from the built environment this September 12th through 14th at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. Don't miss seeing over 2,000 of the biggest names in real estate tech across 3 days of high-level discussion and high-value networking. Check us out at blueprintvegas.com.
Michael, what about you? Obviously, you've worked, you said you started off as a Sparky. You've obviously now had 2 very successful tech companies are obviously running this smart buildings course. What have you sort of seen? Obviously, you haven't come down the traditional route, but for the people you've hired, where have they come from?
Actually, I'm just trying to figure out if anyone in our business at all has been in real estate apart from actually the only person in our business that we've hired that has come from, and I wouldn't say it's a real estate industry. We just hired a guy called James Palmer, who was a global associate before. He's now our head of building management and pre-sales engineering. But he's been working on building management systems for 20 years. But very fortunately, James is one of the people that wants to see change in this industry and sees that technology and the new software and the new hardware joined together can actually make buildings smart, and it's not going to cost the earth where a lot of people tell you it will. He's been the person. We hired James for many reasons, but he's the person that has been saying, like Matt, when I met him, I'm like, you're a smart bastard. We should probably talk. He's the person that's saying, I need to help you reduce your energy costs, optimize your buildings, but it's not like some of the big boys in the industry that you need to rip out everything you've got and replace it with something new to make it smart. If it's 30, 40 years old, you can't make it smart. But if it's 10 to 20 years old, you can make it smart with some new tech. And so he's the only person really that's been in real estate / building management / engineering in our business. Everyone else in our space, in our business, we're a software company, software engineers. They're not necessarily, and none of them have actually ever come from real estate before. So we've kind of, being an Aussie, I would call it sheep dip them in the real estate industry to get them and how real estate works, what people need, what we need to build the platform for, how we need to evolve the platform. But like Matt said, it's really hard to find people. We're growing quite rapidly ourselves, and you've got to be careful who you hire. As Matt said, CVs can be, look great on paper, and then you interview someone and you say like, my grandmother knows more than you and she's dead. So it's hard, but as Matt said, I don't think people necessarily need to come from the real estate industry if they're very smart and they get what you do and they get what you're trying to do and help people with. We're hiring, we've got an interview next week with a young guy from an ESG company, and he is all about ESG, but does he know about building management systems? Does he know about real estate? Does he know about leases and everything else? No, not at all. But he's an ESG expert, and we've got the software. We've got James Palmer. We've got some very smart people, and they'll all put their heads together and come up with a product and a solution that our customers need. And the first thing we'll do is take him out and introduce him to our customers so that he can hear from them what their requirements are.
Yeah. I think what my bit of advice to a hiring manager would be is to think of your team like a kind of patchwork quilt and, tie together all those different experiences rather than look for a herd of unicorns, because you won't find them.
This is like music to my ears, and Pam, sort of advising hiring managers to look outside of real estate, and quite a lot of them are. It's more these new smart building teams. It's convincing the senior management who have always hired from within real estate or similar in the closest to industry you can sort of get, that you can look outside of your normal network. But we are getting there, and diversity of thought is key for any of this sort of innovation to happen, and for us to, I guess, sort of really drive tech adoption. Now, look, if people are listening in, you guys obviously love the smart building space. Why is it? We probably should have started off the podcast talking about this. So that is completely my fault. But why is it so important? Why are you both so passionate about making buildings smart? Is it to do with is it to do with the environment? Is it to do with certain targets? Is it financial reasons? What's like for each of you? What's the one main driving factor, force you have, and why you keep going and you created this course?
So, as growing up, I wanted to be an architect. The architect that sort of did it for me was Corbusier. And his whole thing was kind of throwing away ornamentation and antiquity and using the technologies of the time to what he called toward a new architecture. But he was talking about the early kind of ocean liners, aeroplanes. It's probably the first time that steel reinforced concrete was used. He invented blocks of flats and just that whole change that he had caused in the built environment. And I think for the better, I see this as the toward a new architecture kind of 2.0, but our technology is probably semiconductors and sensors bits of software, and it will fundamentally change the way in which we manage our space, the things that we can do within it. That I love the idea that I can talk to my building and it'll have a personality and help me out. Back, we will get some way to get net zero and try to undo all of the harm that modernism as a style of architecture caused. I'm really excited for if we can just, band around, learn some stuff about the technology and work out the cool ways to apply it to the built environment. We, I think are going to really enjoy our spaces and they're going to be better for the planet.
I like that. Right. How can you top that?
I can't really. When you're with Matt, you can't top what Matt says.
So annoying.
It's why I love him. So for me, I never came from this space, but from an outside looking in, I come from a network, unified comms tech world where state of the art and cutting edge was everything you wanted and you stayed at the forefront of it. Looking at the real estate industry, it's like going back in time in some instances. And I say this in the nicest possible way. Some people really are laggards in our industry, and some people have really taken the bull by the horns and they want to do something about it. And most of those are our customers, very fortunately. And it's understanding the amount of energy and the amount of waste we have in society. I'm a father and a husband, and I have 3 kids, and we need to actually help make buildings smarter, because if we're going to stop the world warming up and we're going to reduce energy costs and we're going to improve indoor air qualities, we spend 90% of our time in it, you need to make buildings smarter. And that doesn't mean ripping the circular economy piece. How do we reuse what we've got? I wear clothes until they're threadbare, which really pisses my wife off. I look like a homeless person sometimes, but why should you throw out something that you can make smarter and help make more efficient rather than just buy new? So if we can take everything we've got, make it as smart as possible and help make it more efficient to the point where we really do need to replace it, that can only be a good thing for our customers, the people in the buildings and the planet. Then you're in quite a good place, because we live in a world, and I have 2 teenagers where they're used to everything on demand. My example of my son, who I obviously love very dearly, Getia won't even deliver to his school anymore because they've kind of figured out every free code on the planet, and they've all created 55 different emails to get free food delivered and get value. Now, that is all on demand, and I want it now. So people want their buildings to be smart and they want their buildings to react immediately. And that's a good thing. But while doing that, you should be able to make them more energy efficient and healthier places to work in. So for me, it's all of the above. Because I'm an Aussie and I talk the ears off a donkey, I've rambled a bit, but that's kind of what it is.
Okay. So before we hopped on, I was trying to get a few data points, facts for the audience. They know those listening and you love them. Now, it says the smart building industry is set to grow to $329 billion US, which obviously shows the amount of investment going into it, the amount of growth within sort of tech. Matt and Michael, what are the major trends you've seen? And have you got any sort of future expectations in terms of it could be amount of products going out, amount of people, businesses, reducing emissions? What are they going to be sort of focusing on? What are you predicting? Matt, this might be one for you to sort of kick us off with.
Yeah, I think we'll see a rationalization in the number of companies that offer sensors. It's no longer cool or interesting to say, oh yeah, I've got one of those too. So I think we'll find best kind of players in that will win. I think we will see a quick upsurge in more master systems integrators from the services side of things until somebody works out a recipe for kind of set flavors of smart that will become productized and easier to install. And on the professional services side, I think we will probably run out of opportunities to do use case playbooks, and that customers will become much more sophisticated in setting the agenda of what they want to do, and instead be around intelligent procurement decisions.
Right. Michael, what about you? Obviously, I'm sure you both are expecting to see a lot more people signing up to the Smart Building Bootcamp. Obviously, a little promo shout out there. But in terms of, I guess, what you're seeing from Metrikus and Aerated, obviously you've seen a massive increase in your clients. I don't know if you want to mention And you give us an example of some of your clients that have sort of grown and been using your product throughout their buildings, or what you're sort of expecting to see in terms of growth?
I think it depends on where you are in the world as well. So we're not just UK. We've got people in India and projects in India, projects in APAC, like around Hong Kong and Singapore. And we've got projects in the US and the UK, obviously, because we're headquartered here. It depends on what you're doing. In the US, and the governor of Virginia, I think it was, they put something out where if you go to make your building smart and you're going to look at energy monitoring, there's a lot of tax incentives there. So, if I go to a level from what Matt was just talking about into the building and the people and the drivers, a lot of drivers are, if the government's going to give me a huge tax rebate or pay for 50% of me digitizing my building and help make it more efficient, then I'm going to do it.
100%.
Money is always a good driver, especially when someone's giving you tax credits or things on that. So in the US, it's a lot around energy. There's a lot of, and I'm really surprised at how quickly the US is accelerating. You've got Local Law 97 in New York. You've got another one that's come out in Colorado, somewhere else. But lots of these local legislations are coming out, and people will need to change, and they'll need to report on carbon emissions. They'll need to report on energy. They'll need to prove that they're making energy reductions. And the US is really pushing hard on that. In the UK, there's no real legislation out yet, but there's a standard coming out called BS 40102, which is the requirement to monitor indoor environmental quality. So it's not just air, it is about light and noise.
Okay.
There's another thing that just came out about this, the safe building standard or something that's just literally come out. I may have that completely wrong, but there's definitely something coming out in the UK about it. Europe has got now monitoring CO2 in public spaces and Brussels and things like that. So indoor air quality is growing. And I've said this many times before, but COVID has made everyone an indoor air quality expert. No one knew what CO2 was or particle matter before COVID, and no one gave a shit, to be quite honest.
Never thought about it, I've got to be honest.
No, but now it's like, right, I'm not going to work unless CO2 is this and the dust.
Yeah.
So it's one of the reasons why I created Aerated is, to get an air score on your building, proves that you're providing a healthy environment for whether you're the landlord into your common spaces or if you're the tenant/occupier, to everyone who works for you, because productivity is key. We need people working in the most productive spaces. So I think we'll see growth all over, beyond what Matt says about how it's procured and how you develop it and how you roll it out. I think legislation will start to be key in most areas for forcing people to do something, because some people are just lazy bastards. And as humans, we are generally lazy bastards. But legislation, I think, will be one of the big drivers for all of this. Streamlined energy carbon reporting in the UK. Australia is starting to look at other legislation as well. So I think legislation will be one of the biggest drivers. And also Salesforce announced, was it 2 or 3 months ago now, that they are paying their senior execs and C-levels, a portion of their bonuses are based on their ESG reporting for their business. So when you start to affect people's big fat salaries and bonuses based on ESG, that's going to get people's attention.
Yeah. On a previous podcast, I was speaking to Jacinda and Jean from Nuveen, and they were mentioning how their bonuses were targeted to certain metrics to do with that. And I think also innovation, tech and everything like that. I also think this was all well and good getting this legislation, but what actually happens if you don't hit those targets or don't report? I mean, are there going to be like sanctions? I know that word's almost taboo to use now, please go to it, but are people getting fined like in New York?
Local Law 97, you're getting big fines. It's like $264 per square foot or something crazy. So if you don't do it, it's going to hurt your wallet in a big way.
Yes, everybody better get on with it. Right, I've literally just looked at the time, and those listening in, Michael and Matt, were very kind and let us push this back by an hour as I was frantically running from a team meeting, which is great that we were doing in the office. And I'm absolutely loving getting back to my healthy office space with just the lower CO2 levels and everything like that. I was doing some research the other day. Can you believe it that some of the biggest companies in the world didn't exist 30 years ago, the likes of Facebook and Uber? On the other hand, real estate is a total juxtaposition, being the oldest asset class in the world. We often hear about the property industry being a slow mover, and the need for prop tech is clear to improve solutions and take advantage of the data being gathered. We saw 21 billion in investment into prop tech in 2020, and it was predicted a further increase of 25% in 2021, which has already been surpassed, which means there'll be plenty to talk about when it comes to the innovation of the built environment. EY reported that 53% of real estate owners think that they don't have the in-house talent to adopt technology successfully. Without technology-minded talent and leadership, the implementation and widespread adoption of your product might be proving tricky. If that is the case, we are here to help. So head to our website, lmre.tech, and we can find the right talent for your company's needs. But we're coming to the fun part, and Michael and Matt, how we finish it is the LMRE part. I don't know why I say R like a pirate. I literally can't kick it. Matt, if you start us off with, what's your sort of main lessons you've learned? And anyone you want to give a shout out to, there might be a product. Obviously, it's everyone who hasn't heard of obviously Metrikus and Aerated, you need to check it out. But I'm personally quite interested to hear what products maybe you rate in the market. It's obviously from your career today. I know there's some amazing products out there where it's like, I don't know, we're looking at switch automation, Aerated, smart space. There's so many products out there, but I would love to hear that from you. Obviously, what's been the most rewarding part of working in the smart building space? We sort of touched upon that earlier. And what you're most excited about for the future.
All right. Main lesson then, I think, is when you're designing a system, know the difference between cool and creepy. Example would be, it's cool to be able to locate your colleagues, but it's creepy if you locate them when they're using the toilet. Mention is not its product, but I saw a brilliant presentation at Integrated Systems Europe the other week from Brad Kroerner, I think is how you say it, who had a really great way of talking about proper digital interaction design in the built environment, and that was super inspiring. In terms of what's rewarding, I would say that as we sort of spoke about earlier, this kind of creation of toward a new architecture 2.0 and the difference it will make to the built environment. And I'm excited. Once we get through this kind of like nonsense stage and we actually start to make a difference with the technology that's implemented.
Well, you sort of cruise through those questions, right? Michael, it's over to you now to finish this off on a high.
So lessons learned, I think, I think there's many more lessons to learn, but I think one of the lessons that, and I'm an Aussie, so there's no gray area. My wife tells me that far too often, but I think a lesson that we've learned is you need to deliver what you say you're going to deliver in this space, because there are a lot of people, as Matt said earlier, over-promising and under-delivering. That actually doesn't affect Metrikus. It affects all the businesses in our space. And if we don't do it well and we bullshit people, and there's not going to be the uptake that we need in this industry to help make buildings smart. So lessons learned, it's not just for me personally, but it's for the industry is, don't overpromise and underdeliver. So, actually just say what you can do and deliver what you can. So that's kind of a lessons learned. I mentioned to anyone or product or industry or service, I'm going to be quite selfish and call out one of our co-founders at Smart Building Bootcamp. And it's from a marketeer's perspective, putting Metrikus on the map and Aerated on the map and Smart Buildings Bootcamp on the map. It's been a privilege to work with her, and she's a very young lady, but she's very driven and very smart. And she doesn't come from the real estate industry either, but she's learned a hell of a lot. And I learned a hell of a lot from her in that respect as well. So
absolutely. Yeah.
And what's been most rewarding, feedback from customers that say we've genuinely helped them and they are getting something back from the money they spent. The worst thing for me personally, and I'm a bit selfish in this, is a customer comes and they roll out Metrikus in a proof of concept and they don't see any value at the end of it. So for me, it's rewarding to see people say thank you and roll out more solutions to their buildings, because it's helping them deliver what they need to and hitting their objectives. And what am I most excited about? I think there's a lot to be excited about in what we're doing coming out the other end, but Smart Buildings Bootcamp has been huge to work on with Matt and Charlotte, and the uptake from it. And you said earlier, Lou, that the people there's been a gap in this market.
Mm-hmm.
Matt educates people given his job daily. I educate our customers, but people need to be able to do this when they want, how they want, at their own pace to learn how to get into this industry. Some people have been thrown into this, FM managers, go and make our building smart. And they're like, shit, okay.
Like write your own job spec.
What do I need to do? How do I make my building smart? Where do I start?
I want zero CO2 now.
It's daunting. It's like, right, hang on a minute. It's like if I said to my eldest son, right, get in the car and drive me somewhere. He'd be like, shit, how do I actually start doing that? It's how do you start your smart buildings journey? Because it is a journey and you can't do it overnight. No one can. So it's Smart Buildings Bootcamp to educate people and help people is hugely exciting. I think also the space itself is really going to change over the next couple of years. The downturn in the market, the requirement to really sweat your assets and to solutions to really help customers is going to shake this market up massively over the next 2 years. So I'm very excited about that.
Yeah. So everyone listening, get on the front foot and go check out the Smart Building Bootcamp. We'll be sharing, obviously, all the details of it as well. But personally, I think it's brilliant to see more courses like this out there. Because you've got Anthony Summers doing his Future of the Workspace, which has been great. There's obviously what Andrew Bond's done with the Future of Real Estate course. There's so much more education that needs to be done. And so well done on both of you for putting this together. But yeah, looking forward to watching the course grow and people take it. But enough from me. Look, Michael, that's been an absolute pleasure. And I will catch up with you after the show.
Perfect. Thanks, Luke.
Thank you for joining us this week on the Propcast, and a big thanks to our guests and our sponsors, Cretech and Reamtech. Make sure you visit our website, lmre.tech, where you can subscribe to our newsletter, keep up with our industry news and events, or if you're looking for your next career move, it's all on there. The Propcast can be found on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube, where all good content is found. Whilst we're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate it if you could spread the word and tell a friend about it, or even write us a review. And I'll catch you next week.
Making a high-quality podcast like this one takes a lot of work. That's a fact. But not when you hire a podcast company. With our white glove experience, we handle everything for you. From guest outreach all the way through to publishing and promotion, we handle it all. You show up to hold great interviews and build relationships with your guests, and we take care of everything else. Podcasting is not just about the audience. Every podcast interview is the start of a new relationship. With a weekly podcast, you'd build relationships with 52 ideal partners or prospects through your podcast interviews over the next 12 months. Do you believe that 52 new relationships would help grow your business? We do. Contact Jason at apodcastcompany.com and let's talk.